From Northern Avenue in Yerevan, this is ＳիվիլՆեթ's Daily News Digest. I'm Maria Titizian, and here are the top stories for Tuesday, March 25. A 22-year-old Armenian soldier is killed on the line of contact. Also, Armenia's president meets with the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs. Plus, 6 men sentenced in the brutal beating death of an army doctor. And later, updates and reactions from Armenia and the Diaspora on the situation of the Armenians of Kesab. We begin today with tragic news yet again. 22-year-old soldier Garnik Torosyan was killed while on combat duty on the line of contact between Nagorno-Karabakh and Azerbaijan yesterday in another ceasefire violation. The Karabakh Defense Army issued a statement confirming that Torosyan was shot and that an investigation has been launched to clarify the details of the incident, which occurred in the eastern direction of the front line. The Azerbaijani side claimed that one of its soldiers was also shot dead by Armenian forces stationed on the front lines. Meanwhile, yesterday, Armenian President Sargsan, who is in the Netherlands on an official visit, met with the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs, Ambassadors Igor Popov of the Russian Federation, Jacques Fauré of France, and James Warlick of the US, and the personal representative of the OSCE chairperson in office, Ambassador Andrzej Kasperczyk. According to the President's press office, the co-chairs and President Sargsan discussed the present state of the settlement process of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and future steps that need to be taken. That same day, the mediators also met with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev. Following the meeting between the presidents and the OSCE Minsk Group, U.S. co-chair James Warlick tweeted, quote, "Met with presidents of Armenia and Azerbaijan, agreement in principle to a summit to discuss Nagorno-Karabakh. We will seek dates." President Sargsan also met with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte. Sargsan stressed the importance of maintaining the present level of cooperation between Armenia and the European Union, which has been attained during the last several years. He also stressed the significance of deepening Armenian-EU cooperation based on the joint statement published during the Third Eastern Partnership Summit in Vilnius. As part of his visit, Sargsan is participating in the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague. The beating death of Army Doctor Vahe Avedian 2 years ago raised a wave of public outcry in the country. 6 men who were accused of his murder were sentenced to 12-year prison terms, each during a court hearing yesterday. The presiding judge read out the verdicts, finding all 6 defendants guilty of murder, sentenced them to 12 years incarceration with a 100,000 dirham fine, or about $250. The prosecutor had asked for 13-year sentences. The 6 men worked at Harsanakar restaurant in Yerevan owned by pro-government oligarch Rupen Hayrabedian, who under public pressure at the time resigned as member of Armenia's parliament. Vahe Avedian was a 35-year-old father of 2 young children, and his death sparked not only outrage, but underscored the continuing impunity in the country. The lawyers representing the convicted men are expected to appeal the sentences. Now let's turn our attention to Kesab, Syria. As we reported yesterday, the entire Armenian population of the centuries-old village of Kesab, located in northern Syria along the border with Turkey, was evacuated over the weekend to the seacoast city of Latakia, as Syrian rebels with Turkish assistance infiltrated the village from across the border. Intense clashes between the Syrian army and rebels continue today in the ravaged town. Here at ＳivilNet, we provided extensive coverage and brought you eyewitness accounts of the events as they unfolded. Yesterday, after several days of silence, Armenian authorities have weighed in on the situation. According to the press secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Armenia, Dikram Balayan, the issue of displaced Armenians from Kesab is on the forefront of the ministry's attention. Balayan said, "Those that have fled are now in Latakia, and we're trying to find ways to bring help in any way possible." When asked if it is possible that the Armenians of Kesab will be moved to Armenia, Balayan responded that in similar situations, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a special procedure to accept Syrian Armenians and give them citizenship and entrance visas. In the country's parliament, a number of members issued a statement strongly condemning the actions of the Turkish armed forces for assisting Syrian rebels in the attack against Kesab, calling it a new challenge against the Armenian diaspora. They called on Syrian and Turkish authorities to conduct an investigation of the events and demanded that the international community assess the situation by sending in UN observers to the Armenian populated areas of Kesab, and called on the government of Armenia to take necessary measures. along with the diaspora, to unify efforts to support the rights of Syrian Armenians. The Speaker of Parliament, Hovik Abrahamyan, said that while he appreciates the concerns of the deputies, the Armenian state cannot intervene in the domestic affairs of another sovereign country. President Sargsan issued a statement and expressed his deep concern over the events in Kesab. He thanked Syrian authorities for the steps taken in protecting the Armenians there. He also said, quote, "I have already instructed the diplomatic missions at the UN headquarters in New York and Geneva to raise the issue of ensuring the security of the Armenians in Kesab and their safe return to their permanent places of residence at the structures dealing with human rights and ethnic minorities." He has also spoken with Aram I, the Catholic host of the Great House of Cilicia, about the situation of the Armenians in Kesab. The Armenian National Committee of America has called on President Obama and Congress to press Turkey to stop facilitating the attacks by extremist foreign fighters on the northwestern Syrian town of Kesab. In a strongly worded letter issued yesterday, ANCA Chairman Ken Khachikian called on President Obama to direct his Secretary of State, the U.S. Ambassador to Turkey, and his Ambassador to the United Nations to demand that Turkey halt the cross-border attacks on Kesab that have forced the immediate civilian evacuation of the area and led to the looting of properties and the desecration of churches. Separately, the ANCA has been in communication with members of the House Committee on Intelligence, House Foreign Affairs Committee, and Senate Foreign Relations Committee over the weekend to urge that Congress use its influence to immediately end Turkey's role in the destruction of Kesab. Khachikian said, "The Armenian American community stands united in seeking to reverse the events of the last several days, which has seen militant extremists stream into Kesab from Turkey. We are strongly urging our government, led by President Obama, and congressional leaders to send a firm message to Ankara that the safe haven and safe passage being offered to these militant groups intent on destroying Kesab must end." In 2010, the Armenian Film Foundation entered into an agreement with the USC Shoah Foundation to license 400 Armenian genocide testimonies to Shoah's Visual History Archive. The Shoah Foundation for Visual History and Education is dedicated to making audiovisual interviews with survivors and witnesses of the Holocaust and other genocides a compelling voice for education and action. Director Steven Spielberg is the honorary chair of the foundation. As the organization turns 20, it has expanded its mission to include interviews with survivors of other genocides, including those in Armenia, Cambodia, and Rwanda. Spielberg was inspired to create the foundation after meeting so many Holocaust survivors while making Schindler's List. Today, Shoah is actively engaged in an international fundraising campaign to ensure completion of the integration of the Armenian testimonies so that they can be presented to the world in time for the commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide in April 2015. Shoah's Visual History Archive is the largest digital collection of its kind in the world, with 105,000 hours of video testimony. This week, we travel with Tim Strait to the village of Arpeni, where he speaks with Hovsep Babi. Tim and Hovsep walk through the old village, where we hear the story of the residents, their homes, and their lives. Take a look.
Այստեղ ես ծնվել եմ։ Ես սանը ես ծնվել եմ, ապրել եմ մինչև 18 տարեկան։ Եվ այնտեղից ինչ որ ես պատմեցի, տեղափոխվան Կապկասիա։ Ես քարերը Բաբերս են շարում, ոշոր Պարիս պես, երկու եղբայրով, ուրեմն սելով, մալով, են սարից կրե պերել են, ու ես Պարիսն են շարել և էսիկ մեր տունն է։ Ես տունը կառուցված է 1888 թվին։
If you want to watch the entire episode of Straight to Old Armenia, you can follow the link on your screen. The exchange rate is up on your screen as we take a look at your forecast. It's going to be a partly cloudy day in Yerevan with a high of 21 and a low of 4. In Gyumri, the high will be 10 and the low a -1. In Stepanakert, the capital of Nagorno-Karabakh, the high will be 12 and the low 1. And our travel forecast takes us to the Armenian city of Sisian, where the high will be 7 and the low a -2. Sisian is a town in the southern Mars of Syunik and was known as Sisagan and Sisavan in ancient and medieval history. The name Gharakilise for the town was used by Turkic and Persian rulers of Armenia, and that name was in use until 1935, when the original name of Sisavan was restored. In 1940, it was renamed Sisian. According to historian Moses Khorenatsi, the name of Sisagan was derived from Sisak, a legendary ancestor of the Armenian princely house of Syuni. The town, located about 220 kilometers from Yerevan, is situated on the banks of the Vorodan River. Near Sisyan, one can find the archaeological site of Zoratz Karer, or the Karahunj Observatory, the St. Hovannes Monastery built in 691 AD, and located 6 kilometers north of Sisyan, the Shake waterfall. Today, estimates put the population of Sisyan at about 14,000 people. And that is our digest for this Tuesday, March 25. We leave you today with a performance by Hasmik and Alexandr Harutyunyan performing folk songs, Mayroke and Yarkhushta with the Shogagan Ensemble in Hanau, Germany. Enjoy, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.